Call the meeting to order and take a roll call. Nick,
Here.
Mariana,
Present.
Bill,
Here.
Dan here, and myself. So we have a quorum. The first order of business is approving the minutes. There were two sets of minutes distributed. Did everybody get a chance to look at them?
Yes. Yes.
Any corrections or suggestions about the minutes?
None. No.
No. Mariana? Bill? Dan?
I just had one comment
Mhm.
on the second page of the October
Third.
3rd meeting.
Mhm.
Tanya is referred to as Citizen Tanya Galis.
Okay, well,
I think,
we can just cross it out.
how about we just either nothing or resident, maybe?
Yeah, generally the French Revolution. So cross out citizen, sounds good. Miss Tanya gave us, okay, that's a good correction. Anything else?
That was it, that's all.
Okay, so, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Second,
Second, okay, Dan? Bill?
yes.
Mariana?
Yes.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Okay, so that's taken care of. The next item on the agenda was to set up some dates, talk about dates for future meetings. I'm pretty sure that Laura had some ideas on that. She said she might be able to join remotely later, so I'd rather push that off. I don't think that's a problem. We can also communicate about meeting dates by email. Then there are three main items listed on the agenda. One of them is the Comprehensive Transportation Mobility Study. One is the FY25 funding for transportation infrastructure, and another one is Regional Transit Innovation Grant. We can take those in order, but there's no specific timing, so we can kind of adapt to things. But I believe that probably the most extensive discussion will be on the funding for transportation infrastructure. I think people will have a lot of questions and there are a lot of details to go over. So I'd like to kind of leave plenty of time for that. So with regard to the transportation and mobility study, Stantec has reported back, and it was put in the packet, some summary and assemblage of public input from the October 17th public outreach session with Harvey Wheeler. Does any member of the committee have comments or questions?
Yes, I do. I do.
Nick?
Yeah. A couple of things. One is the whole. Can you hear me? Okay.
Just barely.
Hello. How's this?
I think Elizabeth is trying to find the source. Nick, we're looking to try and get used to
Yeah.
the speaker on the table. So that's all.
Understood.
You can keep talking, but and hopefully.
Okay. I have nothing more to say.
Slowly, please.
Can you hear me at all?
No.
Hang on. Okay, wait.
It seems to be blue and indicating. You see, hit a button.
Hello, 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 hello. Any better?
Okay, try.
Hello,
Nick.
how's this now? Can you hear me any better?
No,
No?
Yeah, we have nothing but problems right now.
yeah.
Oh,
So I guess we'll just listen to the
It's not blue anymore, right?
not
No.
I can hear everybody really well.
can you hear me, Terry?
Yes.
Okay, so the remote people can hear Nick pretty well. Hopefully it's a little muffled, but we can hear you.
Okay, I can keep it brief.
Loudly, I think we
I'll
should
go
go.
slow. I'll keep it brief and I'll go slowly.
Yeah.
One feedback is on the study. I find the nature of the public participation very confusing. with respect to its validity and how it should affect decisions. And the reason is it's basically a self-selecting sample of people. And I just don't know how we would calibrate that, how we would understand that in terms of the needs of the whole town. Could you hear that?
So just for me to repeat that, what I heard, Nick, here in the room, because the sound is very soft, is you are concerned that there will be difficulty interpreting or using any results from the October 17th outreach because of the self-selective nature of, hearing comments from whoever decided to come, rather than a balanced sample
That's
represented.
good. That's good. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
The other point was, it has some data in there about travel patterns, and it refers to a data source called Replica. And I have no idea what that is, what its validity is. I just don't know where that came from.
So you have a question about something referred to as travel patterns, and did it cite a source?
It's a slide. Yeah, it cited a source, a very tiny type. It says Replica. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what its validity is.
Okay, so these are things we hopefully we can feed back to the consultant and follow up. We knocked out the camera.
I got a good view of Phil's head.
I believe you said that.
Okay, this is good.
The-
All we need is some tennis balls.
Okay, that's enough. That's all. That's good.
Okay, Mariana, did you have any comment right off? I know we just got this information recently and it's a lot to go through.
No comment so far. Still kind of wading through the packet there. Yeah, I hear the point about, the self-selective nature of who shows up at the stuff. Were the survey results have the survey results been summarized yet? Was that in here?
No, the survey was extended until December 8th. So I believe, and I mean, I'm not sure, maybe Steve Dukran knows. I assume the consultant will wait till December 8th before giving any compilation. I mean, they may be already compiling things, but are working on what's been submitted. I don't expect we're gonna get that probably until January because of closing on the 8th and whatever. We might get it before.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Steve.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yes.
Yes, correct. This is extended to December 8th.
Yeah, that would be good. That might help.
It would take a couple of weeks
Let
to
me-
summarize that.
No, that's
You've
creating
got-
feedback.
wow.
So- Hey, Steve, can you hang on 1 second?
Sure.
All right, now can you just try and say something?
Can you hear me?
Nope, hang on.
Okay, what I'll do, I'll just run
Something's-
across the
Can
street.
you turn it
We
up?
can hear you great on the Zoom.
Yeah, I can too.
Yeah, the Zoom people are hearing me. It's just,
So says it's going up.
All right, what about now?
okay, let's
Nope.
try.
Okay, never mind. So I,
All right, I am going to come across the street. How about that? I grab my stuff and I'll head over.
what about now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Now
there we go.
Okay.
Yay,
excellent.
good
Okay,
Yeah.
we got our sound. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Technology can work. Okay, I have to start over?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so the survey will end on December 8th. And I've spoken with a consultant and it'll take a little bit of time, given it's a holiday season, maybe a little bit longer than normally expected, to put the results together and provide a summary, just like they did for the public meeting. And then we share that with the committee.
did they have a projected date? I know there's probably a lot to process, and I don't know if they're doing it in one step or two.
They said a week or two to just compile the results.
Okay,
Laura did ask me a day or two ago what the count was for the survey. So as of I think Monday, midday, 340 respondents
well, good.
at point in time.
Okay, so 2 weeks, I mean, 2 weeks in terms of 7-day weeks from the 8th is the 22nd. So we might get it in December, but it might, I mean, if it's delayed. it might
We'll get
be-
for Christmas.
Yeah,
Plan on that.
okay. Dan, did you have any comments about the what was reported from Stantec?
None specifically, other than, I mean, it's raw data that appears to be, it's gonna need some interpretation. I find some of the presentation a little bit confusing.
Yeah. Bill? What was-
I'd agree with Dan. It's a little confusing at this point, but presumably the consultants will have an opportunity to consolidate, recap.
Okay. Myself, I think, yeah, it needs some work by the consultant and by us, et cetera. I would like, Stephen, if possible, there are these nice photos of all the sticky notes on the boards, which can actually be extended so you can read the sticky notes, which is nice for capturing the data. And but the transcriptions into a spreadsheet, I would appreciate it if we could get the spreadsheet, because just a quick check. My wife Tanya found 2 things that she said were not transcribed right. One was she had a comment about considering making some of Route 62 one way. It was her idea, and it came across as a one-way bike lane on 62. So that was mistranscribed. And there was another thing she had asked somebody to put into a sticky note, one of the Stantec people, about putting bike lanes on 62 with the idea of using existing paved roads. And it doesn't appear in that form. There may be something about improved bike safety on Route 62, but it didn't specifically capture her input about bike lanes. So anyway, so I think that what I would like is to have the spreadsheet available to people, so anything of interest or anything that people know that was put in or heard, we could kind of help scrub it too.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be part of the input for the consultant. Any further thoughts on the study and the report?
I'd definitely like to look, I know we've said this before too, look at that raw data as well and see there might be stuff that we can pull out of there that doesn't necessarily make sense to the consultants, or something somebody scribbled in that was totally brilliant. So
Yeah,
agree with that.
Thank you. I agree with that. We may be able to, such as we have time, or any interested members of the public as they have time might be able to refine the interpretation of that. And I think that would go a little bit towards answering Nick's question about how to use this input. Some of it might be coming up with new questions rather than quantitative answers to the public, but like, we heard about this issue that we hadn't thought of, and how do we get more balanced public input or something.
Mark, can I offer something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Alan Cathcart, Director of Public Works, and Steve Duker and I have talked a little bit about sort of next steps, and with Megan Zamoto, the Deputy Town Manager, as well. And we recognize that this survey is very important. There's a lot of input and involvement, with TAC. So once TAC has the opportunity to review the vetting of Stantec, you're going to be given that directly, and you can kind of have your opportunity to evaluate, look in, weigh in. Then we're hoping to regroup, the senior management with TAC to make sure that we do have, there was also questions and comments about what are the deliverables, where are we going with this? We think that will help inform that so that we can then go back to the consultant and sort of, evaluate the plan of work and make sure it's what we want, kind of collectively. So I just want to put that out there that we have had that conversation. We did hear some of those, concerns and questions as far as, well, what is it at the end of the day that we're going to get out of this study? So we'll be revisiting that and sort of reporting back. Okay, Steve, did I capture that accurately?
Correct, Alan.
Okay.
Did you have any further comments, Steve?
Something about what Nick brought up, the self-selective nature of the survey. I mean, that is true every time, because only the people who show up, right? So I think as we look at reevaluating where we need to go and listening to what tax, after they review all the data, the survey and the data that came out of public meeting, we have to make sure that we separate the wants from the needs. And I believe that's where the consultant comes in, because it's the needs that really matter. And so we have to give them the opportunity to look at the overall town, the picture, to me, when you look at a study like this and the term comprehensive, some folks would probably take a more holistic view. You tend to use the term holistic and comprehensive exchangeable, but they're really not. Holistic to me is the whole thing, looking at it as a whole. Where comprehensive is looking at all the parts, and we engineers are pretty good at looking at the parts separately, but comprehensive when you put all the parts together. And I think that's where we have to get the consultant to go. Look at all the parts, because I've said this before. I haven't seen a whole lot of new information so far, either from the survey or from the public meeting. These are all things that we knew, and going into it, maybe it is good to have the affirmation that these are what people want out there, and but it's where we go from here, and we really want to take a look to make sure that when this is done, it's really what we needed. So we can make plans that are implementable. That's where we come from. The deputy town manager, head of plan and land management, she asked one question when she started paying attention to this project, and she asked, what is engineering or public works wants out of this project? And she asked the same thing about planning, and that made us start thinking, we really want plans that people asking for, saying that these are the things that are needed. So it's making us give it a fresh look, and hopefully we end up in a place where everybody will benefit.
Okay, so I want to mention a couple quick things then. So one simple mechanics thing is, I think, along with what I mentioned and Mariana mentioned, the TAC would like to get the spreadsheet so that we can compare it to the pictures of the sticky notes and see if we can refine some of the entries, or just double check. Maybe we can get new ideas from it ourselves. So we'd like to get that in spreadsheet form or whatever, rather than everybody mark up pieces of paper and hand them around, etc. The other thing is, you mentioned wants versus needs, and that kind of segs, I think, into the next item on the agenda, which is this FY25 funding for infrastructure, because I think, to me, wants can mean a lot of things, but sometimes people take for granted the infrastructure that's crumbling beneath their feet and what it takes to prevent it from crumbling. So I think it might be helpful if Public Works, or committee wants to enunciate for the public and the TAC to know the kind of things they want out of the study a little more explicitly. That might be helpful to kind of put it on the table, especially in terms of what you say about wants versus needs, and the fact that some of the needs are things that people take for granted, but Public Works can't take it for granted. All right, so if nobody has any objections, I would like to move on to the FY 25 funding for transportation infrastructure. And there was a couple of things in the packet. One of them is there was a memorandum from Director of Public Works Alan Cathcart to Carrie LaFleur, and I wanted to ask Alan if, as far as the TAC is concerned, are there certain parts of this that the TAC should be particularly considering or looking at, or is it everything together, or how would you help us help you, so to speak?
Okay, sure, it all starts with, as Steve says, for Public Works, we are in implementation, we do a lot of planning. But when we start looking at capital plans, these are projects that we're looking for, to some degree, support, or this is the fuel to do a project. And over the past 4 years or so, with the new team in engineering, and it's all, everybody over in engineering is new within the last, 4 years. And I'm relatively new as far as my position as director. We've been tasked to try to put together budgets to support a lot of assets in town. Transportation is, fits within some of these. And so the framework, for the most part, historically, this predates having a transportation planner and planning. This is where, the brick and mortar was Public Works, so engineering took the lead. And historically, there was sort of a lump sum roads program kind of approach, where it was, we're doing work in the right of way, and for the most part, we're asking for X amount of money. And let's just say that, there was a $5 million ask, but it included everything. You never knew at the end of the day when 2 million was allocated, well, where is it actually going? Because one individual heard it was going for this, another individual heard it was going for that. So everybody was disappointed if their particular interest wasn't being addressed. And so engineering would continually field calls about, what about this project? And the answer was, well, that wasn't funded. And it was a little less clear, not by any reason other than there just hadn't been a better, kind of model. So we've improved it and Steve Dukran really took the lead on what are those areas or programs that we should identify. And we started to, divide that lump sum into bins. And those bins are basically where engineering Public Works provides a recommendation. We're the ones who can do the evaluation of the assets to some degree or another, and then present a plan or proposed budget. And we've been told, and to the, sort of the credit of the town manager and FinCom, your job isn't to, massage us into something you think is going to be acceptable. Tell us what we need. And that was sort of a different model, I think. It's the only model I've been sort of following. So our job in Public Works is, we serve the community. You need to know what the needs are, and the community needs to make decisions as far as where it wants to allocate its resources. Be clear that Public Works could more than absorb the entire town budget for what we believe is important. And that's just the nature of the beast. So, and we share our budget plan with the Public Works Commission, but again, it's across all spectrum of including water, sewer, and everything else. This particular TAC now has a seat at the table to try and advocate and help the town advance transportation interests, right? you don't have a staff per se.
Mhm.
There is, support, through planning. But it's also a new position
Mhm.
in planning. So I think the development of the budget over the last year or two is still reforming what's the right way to do it. But until there's a different model, just appreciate engineering is sort of advanced or advocated for things that may or may not be specifically projects, but may even trigger into planning to some degree. So with that said, I'm gonna sort of share, if I can share the screen. I don't know. Elizabeth, you or Heather can give me,
Yeah, no, you
you
should.
have the ability?
Yep.
Okay, great. Let me go. I'm gonna bring at least the proposed budget and have Steve kind of talk to it.
Okay. Just a minute, Alan.
Yeah.
So, Laura, can you hear us fine?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry for my change of plans this
Is
morning.
everything okay?
Yeah, I just have a sick kiddo, so
Okay,
Uh,
all right.
if you can keep chairing the meeting, that would be great.
Okay, no problem, either way.
All right, so. I think if we possibly just to improve, Steve, you can see the screen. I'm gonna try and I'm gonna expand this a little bit. Make it a little larger. And talk about. I'm gonna. So you can see kind of where we are. This was our 24 budget. This is where we are today. And this is the 25 proposed budget. Steve, can you speak to this a little bit? Kind of help the
Yeah.
audience understand what we're doing?
Sure. So we were here the last time and we have 10 to 15 minutes to run through this. And I believe the members did get, the message from what we had from that last meeting. And so I'll just reiterate some of those points. Alan talked about the PWC and the charge of the PWC with regards to that's because we're just talking about transportation related type projects for the benefit of the TC. We want to start where we go back to our core functions as public works, which are related to taking care of what we have. So when we construct this budget, we want to go there first, because if we can take care of what we have, why add more? Which is pretty much where the TAC is coming in, right? Let's upgrade, let's expand. But we have to go back and take care of what exists. So the very first item there, asset management tool, we want to get that tool in place. I mentioned the last time that we have a tool when it comes to pavement management. It's a good tool. We've been using that for a number of years. And so our pavement management program, in terms of what we need to do, is good. It just comes down to how much money we are given. That item is about 2/3 of the way down. We have asked for FY25 just about $4 million. The recommendations we are seeing coming from the finance committee and town manager is about half of that. That is pretty much what the issue is when we ask for what we need based on, based on the analysis of what the system and the conditions, and you get the 50%, yes, you struggle with what do you do now? How do you really prioritize your program? How do you apply the treatments that are needed to keep your assets at the level they should be? When it comes to pavement management, we measure that in pavement condition. It's from 0 to 100. We currently are around 66, 67. We have not been making improvements in that area. And we look at some towns that are doing much better than us. We have funded at a better level in the past. draw comparisons, but the town of Lexington, the average condition index was 90. And you can see it, when you go over there, the roads are in much better shape now,
And our Stephen right now is
around 66, 67.
66, 67.
And Steve, a quick question, can you give us how comparable is the total distance of the road network with Concord and Lexington in miles or
Right.
some other metric?
Concord has 108 miles, Lexington has 90.
Okay, so fairly close, right?
And so road condition, you know, it's not keeping it at an acceptable level or.
And so I just have a quick follow-up on that one. And do you have any sense of what the budget numbers are for that particular item for pavement management here versus Lexington? I mean, how much is Lexington spending to get to their better number?
So in order for the Lexington report, they need $2 million a year to keep their average condition index at a 90, which they are did. If they would spend, I think it's $3.5 million, they can get the condition index another 4 to 5 points higher. We
And
look-
that they've been doing that for some period of time, unlike us.
we have been, we have had.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important.
And
Yeah, thank you.
and we view getting a pavement condition, not just for, you know, vehicular traffic, it's also where a lot of people ride their bicycles.
I think if you know.
In some neighborhood streets where you don't have sidewalk, that's where people walk. So getting your, managing your pavement to a higher condition.
Okay, Steve, I think Dan has a
Steve,
question.
I just missed the, what is the PCI in Lexington?
90.
Okay.
Is that a target we would like to aim for, a realistic target?
Certainly, 90 is excellent. If we get into the 80s, you know, within the next 5 years, that would be a goal for us.
And Steve, could you say again how much they're spending on an annual basis to keep their condition at 90?
I know they're spending about $3 million a year, but they only need $2 million to keep it at 90.
It's important to understand that Concord fell behind, so we are lagging. We have underinvested.
Mhm.
And as we've explained, underinvestment means increased costs. So, you know, one of our challenges and goals is to get back up to a more acceptable level, and the 80s would be very acceptable. We've identified the fact that we need to spend a little bit of money up front to get caught up, so then we can get into more maintenance, but we're not there. I will share that the town manager and a new CFO are looking very carefully at these numbers. Again, the ask is, what do you need? Don't tell us what you think you're gonna get, which has been very helpful because they're already starting to strategize as to how could they potentially patch together a program so we can get up to pace. And they're working, you know, at, you know, the potential of, you know, maybe a bond authorization so we can go out and get caught up and pay back over 20 years. But if we don't get caught up, we're forever literally just maintaining poorer quality, you know, with, you know, same level of investment every year. So they have reached out to us. We're talking with them about models. Maybe the Transportation Advisory Committee could help advocate, you know, on that, you know, once you start hearing more about any alternatives. But right now, regrettably, the model is we ask for what we think we need. We have to then get fit into what's the budget constraints of the town and directives of the finance committee, which is appropriate. But we just have to change the model, I think, and that's what's clear based on engineering's identified of needs. And Steve was talking about road pavement management alone. And again, if you look at the spreadsheet, he's also broken up into other areas or what we call programs. And I think this, committee should focus on traffic improvements, transportation program, pedestrian safety and bike improvements. Those are the areas that this committee should be focused on. And regrettably, you'll see the funding in 24 is non-existent in some of these key elements. Part of it is hope and optimism that eventually we'll kind of figure out what the real needs are and then be able to advocate. But that's where we're at. If you look at 24, we don't have funds for those things. There was an allocation for this study that we're looking into, the town manager carved out to allow us to try and get our arms around transportation. So this study is very important because that will result in asks that can then be supported, not just, desires and concepts, but legitimate asks. And that's one of the things that we want to sort of parse out through the study is, what do we get at the end of this that will help us, Concord, advance our interests and tax focus is transportation, which is all encompassing, but those areas I'd say pay attention to.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. Dan.
No, so as far as the parking lot, for example, on this parking lot rehabilitation, it looks like you're investing, $300,000 to $500,000 for a couple of years, and then it drops down to 50.
That's right.
Is that because we're getting up to the level, and that's the kind of model we would see with road improvements as well?
Steve, you want to speak to that?
So then you're looking at the request.
I'm looking at the parking lot rehabilitation, which goes,
Yes, definitely. Let me speak to it. So the 425 for FY24, that's appropriated, and we're going to use that. We have put a request for, some large sums. If those were to be given to us and we would be able to invest those in the other parking lots, then we come down to maintenance. But it all depends on whether we get the money in those ensuing years.
So with the road pavement management, that looks like an increasing expenditure through FY29. I mean, at some point, will that drop down to the level of $2 million once we get the PCI up higher?
That's the model that works.
So then it would seem to make sense that an expenditure, a bond issue or whatever, would really be the way to go to get the cash infusion so that we're saving money in the long run.
That's the concept. And again, to the credit of the town manager's office, that's what they can think through. Public Works can only say these are the needs, and they look at the financial models that may work. Mark, I want to apologize. You said that there's no constraint. Steve and I actually have a 10 o'clock meeting.
Okay,
So I just want to let you know
good.
that.
Okay, well, that
Yeah.
works out well.
Can I make a couple of points?
Oh, yes, sure, Nick, sure.
One is, I think TAC has to go on the record pretty soon as to whether or not we support this, which I think we do. That's the first point. Second point is, does TAC want to have discussion about, Alan and Stephen have put out here proportions for how much to do traffic improvements more versus transportation program. I'd like to understand that in more depth, because if I were doing this, I would have, the numbers would have looked differently. I would have put more into transportation programs. So there's some discussable things there about the ratios. The third point is, I expect there will be some pushback to the total amount available for these programs where TAC is involved. And I don't want to preemptively prioritize these things and, create a path for these numbers to be lowered. But at some point, we maybe have to make some choices. And I just wanted to put that out there and say that we need to be prepared to have that discussion down the road.
Mariana, did you have any questions or comments related to the numbers that we just looked at?
Just kind of taking it all in. I'm kind of new to seeing the budgets in this way. So just kind of trying to process and follow along. But nothing to comment right now.
Okay, and Laura, did you have any further question?
No, I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the memorandum that Alan and Steve shared. I found the description of each of the line items really helpful. So just wanted to say thank you on that. Also, I see Terry has her hand up, and Terry, the select board last night discussed this, so I think it would be a good idea to have Terry give us a little bit of a debrief about what was discussed at the select board meeting. Not sorry, last night, Monday night.
Sounds good. Yeah, Terry, go ahead.
Okay,
Sorry.
just very briefly, first of all, I think, Alan and Steve, whenever you talk about the, pavement condition, please include that graphic. When you talk about the 67, we're on the very steep part of the graph now, where things are gonna get very expensive very fast if we don't fund it. And I don't think the public knows that. I'm not sure everybody in TAC even knows about it. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but that graph is crucial. And it ties in with what happened Monday night, where Kerry did talk about funding this through a bond until about FY30. And then after that, we're going to have some money freed up from all these pension and OPEB commitments that we've been doing. They're going to be fully funded. And she wants to put those millions of dollars into some of these capital needs starting in FY29 or 30. But until then, we don't want to wait. So she's floating the idea of the bond. However, the bond will cost maybe about $500 per house every year for 10 years, and that's half as much as the middle school. So there's going to be a lot of pushback. We're competing with the bathrooms at the schools are also going to be another debt override, debt exemption question. There's all kinds of competition this year and down the road. So tax support would be vital on this.
Thank you, Terry. I just wanted to float a suggestion to Public Works, which is, and for all of us, which is with regard to communication to the public at large, in terms of things that go to town, eventually to town meeting, in terms of communication to the FinCom and hearings of the FinCom, et cetera, the numerical numbers we saw, I think, are a very important first step. But I would suggest possibly, and what Terry just said about the cost of kicking maintenance down the road, increasing the net cost significantly. Those are important. But I wonder also if there might be some helpful communication tools in terms of breaking numbers down. You know, I hate pie charts, but it doesn't have to be that. What is taking care of existing infrastructure? What are new compliance regulation measures? What are safety improvements? What are potentially capacity increases? What is catch-up maintenance as opposed to taking care, you know, if there's a way to split what we're paying for what we didn't do in the past versus what is ongoing and projected, et cetera. If there's ways to bring these out a little more graphically, that might be additional tool for some of this public outreach and communication.
I have another quick question
Yeah,
for
please.
Alan, and so I think, first of all, the presentation is great because it really helps us to understand, you know, where the proposed budget is going and how it works out. So the question is, the numbers relate primarily to the tax base plus Chapter 90. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And I know that the state enhanced Chapter 90 this year. I think they plugged in some more money at the state level. So can you describe what effect that might have with respect to these numbers? And then the second follow-up question is, which department is responsible for looking for other revenue sources to fund some of this? So is Public Works doing that? Is planning doing that? Is the finance committee or the town manager doing that in terms of, you know, available grant money that might supplement some of the money coming out of the taxpayer?
I think I can speak on behalf of Public Works and, you know, a little bit of the fortunate thing is we have a new team, you know, with Megan kind of stepping in, obviously Elizabeth, Hughes, who's been around and knows some of the background. We're trying to cobble together the next, steps of how we advance things. I think the study is going to be the building foundation of all these conversations. And, we don't have a system in place that we can say, this is the model and continue, because I think Marsha Rasmussen has taken a lead on a lot of initiatives. So I think, that's to be determined, but that's to be also, discussed. We need to make sure we have the right players at the right table, and we collaborate between Public Works, planning, include TAC, Public Works Commission, Select Board. So that's a work in progress, but I hear the question. And Steve, do you have a comment on the Chapter 90 kind of retooling or any updates you can share?
We've traditionally got $600,000 to $700,000 per year. We haven't been contacted regarding to what the new amount is going forward. So we don't know how it increases quite a bit. Certainly we can do more and do better, and less reliant on the town's money, but until we know that number for sure. The formula used by the state is based on miles of streets. I expect Phil's take on it is that if we get more money, then we may be doing a bit more in Chapter 90 whenever that's is given to us. I suspect that 2024 would be maybe given up with the new distribution.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Stephen, I guess you have to go to a meeting too?
Yeah, and it's in a different location, so I'll have to wrap up and head over there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
Mark, I have a comment and then also a proposal, and this is not for Steve. So, so I did want to say that I was following the Chapter 90 conversation during the budget process at the state level, and if they did increase it, it was a very slight amount. I'm not remembering exactly what the outcome was, but there was very compelling testimony from a lot of the other communities around the state about how Chapter 90 has been level funded for like a decade, and so many communities are struggling with very similar issues. I think it's important to highlight that we're not the only community struggling with that. There was some really compelling testimony from the center of the state where they're like, there's been a bridge out that's a major route for like years, and we can't cobble together enough money to replace this major bridge. So so that's a comment. And then my sort of proposal is, I think that, as the Transportation Advisory Committee, our job is to advocate for the funding that is needed for the transportation infrastructure that the community wants. And fortunately, we have some information from the transportation study already about very clear from the testimony that was collected at the public workshop about the need for better pedestrian connections, better sidewalks, ADA compliant crosswalks, better pavement condition. There's a lot that we already know from the study. So I think we have a lot of good information to inform a letter to the Finance Committee and to the town manager's office with our recommendations on, we do need more funding for pedestrian and for pedestrian upgrades, for crosswalks, for pavement management. So I would propose that we we write a letter, to our municipal partners about this. But I also want to say that I think it would be valuable for us to write a letter to our congressional delegation, talking about how, we're struggling with funding for these things, and more Chapter 90 funding would be very much appreciated in the next round of budget. And this would be a good time to put those requests forward for the next budget cycle. So I just want to say those are two things that we as an advisory committee could do. We could write a letter. We could write two letters, one for the finance committee and the select board and the town manager's office, and one to our congressional delegation about state funding for these kinds of things. So I suppose that's a
you,
formal
Laura.
proposal.
That's a proposal, yeah, thank you. What the other members think about that?
I just want to clarify, when you're referring to the congressional delegation, you're referring to Senator Barrett and our two state reps. You're not referring to the.
I'm
Congress.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry. I meant our state elected officials. So
Right, okay, got it.
and I mean, we could always CC the governor. She's part of the
Yeah.
budget process too.
Right, yep.
Secretary of Transportation.
Marianne, what do you think?
In favor. That sounds great.
And Nick?
Yeah, especially the stuff in town. I mean, I think for me, the urgency is to make sure the communication with the select board and the finance committee is done as soon as possible.
Okay. Dan?
No, I'd agree completely. I mean, I think that the select board apparently is well aware of this. And I think the idea of reaching out to the state, Senator Barrett and the representatives is a really good idea.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Laura, what you're saying about the flat funding affecting all kinds of communities in Massachusetts, I think that anyway, I would consider it urgent to write a letter to the representatives, senator representatives, and I would myself think it might be most effective to say that it's that many communities are suffering from this, and this is a general problem in the state, and we're not alone. In other words, that it isn't just Concord asking for money, but like you said, there are people in bad shape, and everybody travels different places, and so it's a common cause. Would you, Laura, be willing to draft a letter on the Chapter 90 to the state? I think the interaction with the FinCom, the select board, is ongoing for the committee, but the state one maybe could be tied up, first.
I'd be happy to take the lead on the letter to our state representatives. I do think we should write a letter to FinCom and Select Board soon. This is the time to be advocating for these things as part of the budget process. So I think that's actually more urgent than the Chapter 90 letter.
Yeah, I think we've got to get that in writing. That's not just the word of mouth that we support them.
I think we have plenty of time here to talk about this for another 10 minutes, and still leave time for the regional transit and the other liaison and public comment. So,
and just so you know, Beth is joining us at 10:20, so we actually have 15 minutes on.
Okay, excellent, great. So thank you very much. In terms of what we would say to the FinCom and the Select Board, besides full funding, are we going to be talking about supporting the idea of a bond for catching up with maintenance so we can finally get to an 80% level? How much?
I don't think we have no competence whatever to suggest a bond. I mean, that's totally up to the finance manager and the town manager to recommend that.
So what would the letter contain?
We just say we strongly support the requests being made by Public Works for programs related to transportation, and then enumerate what they are. And then, as Laura said, call out specific things that we've picked up from the community so far in the study, and reference the fact that the study is underway and that we're starting to get feedback that supports the request.
Would you, Nick, consider volunteering to draft a letter? And just keep it simple, or is anybody else?
Sure. Yeah, okay, I'll take a shot at it.
Yeah, I think, again, what you just said comes across to me very clearly and is useful. What are other?
Yeah, I think it's important not to suggest any sort of a funding mechanism. It falls way outside of our purview. And Terry's comment that it's gonna cost the average household $500 a year for 10 years, I think is,
Yeah.
we don't want to get ourselves in the middle of that fracas.
Terry, do you have your hand up
Well,
again?
I think because taxpayers are going to be asked, if this goes through, taxpayers will be asked to vote on a ballot, whether to support this exempt debt. I think your opinion on it is very important.
Well, isn't it important when it actually appears as an article rather than now, rather than trying to guess?
Well, yes, but the articles are being submitted now.
Okay.
So just so that I'm clear, the articles we're talking about are for 2024, right?
No, that's now.
Town meeting.
Right.
The
FY
warrant-
But for 2025 budget, okay, all right, thank
That's
you.
right. The warrant closes January 3rd or some date right around there. So warrant articles are coming in now.
Okay. So the budget, as it's proposed, were as the needs as they were outlined by DPW in the chart, will be voted on as part of this spring's town meeting, correct? Not the following year's town meeting. I just want to make sure that I'm crystal clear on my own
Right.
mind.
Right, we vote on them every year.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But this year, they're also thinking about proposing this bond. And the FinCom was kind of iffy on it because there's so many other competing interests. So that's why it's important to weigh in now.
Okay.
I just want to voice my support for the letter that Nick outlined. I think that would be great. And I don't think we have to get into the specifics of whether it should be a bond or something else at this point. I think our job is to make the case that our job is to make the case that spending is not matching need. We have needs in the community that are not being met, and we need to figure out a way to fund the needs. So I would say let's keep it at that level, and then once we get into preparing for town meeting, we can have more conversations about how to make the case to the taxpayers for whatever the finance committee has laid out in terms of their funding solutions. I would just say that long term, I think we do need to have a conversation about sustained spending. I think that borrowing to pave roads, which they lose their condition over like a predictable period of time. We need to be building that into the annual budget so that we don't end up in this backlog of maintenance issues. So I think that we may need to have more conversation about that later on. But I think for now, we can make a very straightforward argument about here are our needs and this is what we need to be spending to meet those needs.
I'll throw in one other thing, and that is, I agree with Laura, but I also want to reiterate what Terry said, which is that we're at that sort of tipping point where if we don't spend money, we're going to end up spending a lot more money over the longer term. Now, I agree with Dan. I don't think we need to get into it. This is how we're going to raise the money. I think we just need to be in support of raising money to address this. Otherwise, we're being penny wise.
The big takeaway from what I get from Steve and Alan is that we're spending money which is going to ultimately save us money. It's pretty dramatic the way the parking lot rehab, for example, drops off once we get them up to condition. Roads are going to take longer, but if Lexington's spending they're spending half of what we're now or what we want to spend now to maintain a much higher level.
Well, then, I mean, we can, without talking about the funding per se, the letter can emphasize the fact that maintenance has been neglected to the extent that now we need to invest in order to save, to reduce future expenditures, et cetera. Just kind of make it very clear. Laura, before you joined the meeting, the first agenda item was about possible meeting dates, and I pushed that off in hopes that you would be able to join the meeting. Did you have any particular dates in mind? Because this relates to these draft letters, in the sense that if you and Nick are able to create a draft, which can of course be posted as a draft, and people can look at it, then the question is when we would be able to vote on it.
Yep.
So what dates did you have in mind?
Well, according to our regular calendar, we wouldn't be meeting again this year, but I think that this is a good topic to maybe discuss again after Beth presents, because Beth is going to be submitting a grant for a public transit program in early January. So we may also need to have a letter for that as well. So I would say if we want to get a letter in on the budget, if we want to get a letter in on the transit grant, we may want to have a short meeting sometime between now and the end of the year, but maybe we can push that agenda item off one more time and wait until after Beth presents, if that works for you, Mark.
Sure, I think that sounds good. Okay, while we wait for Beth, she's here.
Well, and Beth is
joined?
here, it looks like.
Oh, great. Okay, welcome, Beth. Why don't you take the floor?
Great. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're trying something new in December. So full disclosure, we're open to the public from 9 to noon. So we could get 1 or 2 people that walk in the door here. So thank you very much for having me. I sent Laura the link to the Mass DOT grant that we are applying for. It is called an innovation grant. Original deadline was this Friday, and thankfully it is now January 19th. So what this grant, what we're intending to apply for is called micro transit. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar, so I'll give you a very brief overview. There's 2 companies that offer it in the state. One is called VIA and one is called Circuit. And they both operate within the state in a bunch of different communities. So Mimi, Granny, and I have been working with VIA for a few reasons. One is they have an amazing grant team. They will help us. They have done these grants before. They have used their knowledge to help get grants with Mass DOT. So they've been a huge asset for us, considering when Aaron Stevens left, this grant came up and there was nobody to sort of follow it through. So Mimi and I are pressing ahead on it. So microtransit is a series of small vehicles, all electric. And then they do have capacity to do larger vehicles. So they can transport anywhere from 4 people to 12 people. And the benefit to them is it's a very nimble system. So you could start in January with 2 cars, and they would operate as a Town of Concord Uber, in that it would run on demand. So, and then you could scale up. So April, you could have 8 vehicles running, and you can also add a fixed route. So if we wanted microcars just to go back and forth between West Concord and Concord Center, that could be 1 car that just runs a shuttle essentially back and forth. So the company has been doing this. They have worked with they've worked with the city of Boston. They have worked with Plymouth. They have worked with Quincy. A ton of historic towns are trying it for the very same reasons that this group and the town as well have been looking at sort of innovative alternatives. We don't have a bus. We have a commuter rail that comes once an hour. We have segments of our population and our target that don't have transport. So this helps the workforce. People that are looking for employees that don't have a way to get here, getting people from the commuter rail to their employees. This could run 7 days a week. So when the COA isn't running on the weekends, it could help seniors. It could help people 7 days a week that don't qualify for the senior shuttle. And obviously it could help the tourist market as well. So when we look at a system that has the potential to have the most impact among many parts of our community, the microtransit here is a really good use of that. So what they would do is, assuming, who knows if we're going to get this grant, of course, it's a bit of a risk, but if we apply in January, we should hopefully have a decision by March, and be able to implement this fall, hopefully in time for October, is sort of our hope that we could start it as a test run in October and then have it fully scaled up for the 2025th anniversary. So that's a little bit about the project and the types of vehicles. What we like about it is the nimbleness, that it can scale up or down as need demands. Their technology is great in terms of they will actually give us a hard phone line. So obviously we know that the Wi-Fi can be a challenge for anybody trying to get an Uber. So what the company will do, and actually both companies that we have spoken to will do this, they will place a hard line in the visitor center and a location in West Concord. So if somebody needs to access that, they'll have a way to do that. They might not have a smartphone. They can account for that. So that really helps our population that might not have the most mobility, the most tech savvy. It really, again, it checks a lot of different boxes for ways to move people throughout town. And then the other component here in terms of scalability is if our neighboring communities decide they also want to apply for a grant. So say Lexington or Lincoln or Bedford, anybody else that wanted to apply for a grant or go with this system, these systems can then become linked. So you could essentially create a larger scale regional, but each town would sort of have its own, it would serve Concord Center, but it would also it could also potentially be a regional transit. And they have, again, what I like about them is they are a full scale operation. They have the technology, they have the operations, they have maps, and they have tons of data. Mimi and I asked about a back end data. It's really phenomenal what we've been able to see that they provide you as a dashboard. So they track how many people are riding, how far are they riding? And then it can be adjusted on the fly. So they will have a person that is constantly monitoring the system for us. Since we don't, I don't think we want to go into the business of transportation management for the community, but we want something that fits a bunch of needs. So April weekends, Patriots Day, you could have 8 vehicles running. They can use our existing COA van. So say one of those becomes available or is available on the weekend, they can adapt their technology to be able to use our existing infrastructure as well as deliver these additional vehicles. So it's a really neat idea. It's been proven in some of these other historic towns. I've talked extensively to the town of Plymouth and Salem, and they love it for all the reasons we love it in terms of its ability to be nimble. It's not inexpensive. The grant, we're waiting for them to give us some better estimates, but my guess is we're going to apply for between $600,000 and $800,000 based on what VIA comes back with how many vehicles they think. I'm letting their data take the reins here in terms of figuring out based on square footage, based on area covered. So they will be able to cover the entire of Concord, the 27 square miles. So it won't just be focused. They will be able to take people, obviously we want people to go to Emerson Hospital, but they'll be able to go out to Vero Farm. They'll be able to go out further. So that's sort of a little bit about the grant and the process. I'm happy to take questions. It's very new to me. The microtransit I've been watching for over a year, but this grant just popping up is sort of a new idea of how to fund it.
Yeah, a question, Beth.
Sure.
When you have it available, could you share with us the scope of the service that would be provided? In other words, exactly what would be available to consumers to,
Yes.
Whether it's picking up at their house or only at fixed locations or,
No, they'll be able to go from their house. Yep.
Right, whatever, but it would be really helpful because the details mean everything and in terms of the consumer. So if you could share that with us when it's available, that would be very good. We can help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. So VIA has actually set up a series of meetings with Mimi and I for once a week so that we stay on top of the deadlines, letters of support, what we need from them. So we should have a really robust, package to send you guys very shortly.
Okay.
Beth, without linking up with other towns, is there a availability of going outside of Concord? You get picked up at your house, you want to go to Whole Foods in Bedford. Is that a feasible trip?
So they look at the mileage. So right now we have them focus on the square miles of Concord, but as we look at the data, again, they can adapt. So we can say, we want you to cover an additional four or 5 square miles. Is that doable? So that could be.
We just lost your
You're
audio.
muted. We lost your audio. You're muted.
All right, how about now?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
So yeah, so it's possible to adapt it. What we'd really love is if the other towns all get on board, and then we end up having this regional transit that, you know, people can move from A to B very seamlessly throughout the communities.
Is there a cost to the user?
So that is set by the town. So once we get the proposals back on terms of how much it'll be, I would love to see it be a very low fee. So it would have a fee, which makes it, you know, viable. But we want to make sure it matches the needs of all the populations we're hoping to reach. So I know this COA also charges a nominal fee. So we're thinking that it would be something, you know, relatively moderate, you know, a very small fee.
Yeah, I think, Beth, if, when you have it available again, just how any revenue collection would be administered would be important for us to know.
Yep, we talked to them about that, and again, they have a full system, so they can take, yeah, their drivers are hired by them, quarried by them, trained by them, so they can take. I know they have an app that you can pay on, but we did talk to them about matching the population's needs and being able to take other forms of payment as well.
Okay, Laura, but do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, but both. First, I want to say that I'm really excited about this this grant application. I've been to several workshops on other towns that have done this, and I think that it could be a really good fit for us. One thing that I was talking to the folks in Wellesley. In Wellesley, they're part of the Metro West Regional Transit Authority. So under MWRTA, they established a curb-to-curb microtransit program to complement their fixed route service. And one of the things that the manager of that program said is, one of the best things is that they're gathering a lot of data about where transit reliant populations live, where they want to go in real time. And so they're actually planning to use that data to inform changes to their fixed route service. So in the town of Concord, since we don't have a fixed route bus service, this could be a really great stepping stone to getting to more public transit, because if we know where folks want to go, we can establish, you know, if there's a clear pattern, we can establish shuttles or fixed route service after a couple of years of this. So my question was, I wonder if, I know that Wellesley in their curb to curb program, which is called Catch Connect, they have designated a few locations that you can go to outside of Wellesley. Instead of it being like a mileage thing, they have like a few transit stops that you can go to and a few medical centers. So that might be an efficient way to add like a little, you know, because we may want to add Stop and Shop in Acton or something like that. So there may be like a few destinations that could be serviced outside of the town.
Yeah, and the nimbleness of this is by far the best attribute, because we can start to see there's a demand to always go there. So we could create a fixed route that it goes twice a day, every day, or, you know, we can adapt sort of month to month, or more often.
So my question to you, Beth, is just in terms of the grant, you said that you would be applying for maybe $600,000 to $800,000. Is that on an annual basis for a certain number of years, or is this a one-time grant? Could you tell us a little bit more about the sustainability of the funding?
So right now it's a one-time grant, but a couple of things can come into play. One is there's advertising opportunities, which the town of Plymouth has taken. You can wrap cars, put advertising in there. So that's a possible stream of revenue. And then this innovation grant, I think, comes out more often. So again, I would think if we can prove it, then it helps us to leverage other grants. It helps us to leverage a regional grant. We were just successful in signing an IMA with the 4 towns for the 250th. So I think the more we do that adds a new layer of functionality, helps us for the next wave.
Sort of a follow-up question on that is, you know, we were poised to join the TMA that Acton uses, which is Crosstown Connect. And TMAs are, you know, an organization where you can have different employers pay dues into them. So I wonder if sort of like pairing, I think that that's an opportunity we should be exploring. Either our group should be exploring it, but just sort of trying to think long-term about sustainable funding sources. Because I know that I'm like a broken record on this, but grant-funded public transit is a dangerous game, because like our trolley funding, it could never come back. So I'd love to work more with you, Beth, on brainstorming. Sorry.
No worries.
Does anyone-
Yeah, and we can certainly look into that some more. You know, I know that we had the Crosstown Connect. I see Elizabeth in the background. So there's been some other things that we've had and then didn't get when COVID hit. So, and obviously the big study is underway. So we may get even more data. Like ideally, sure, we would have a trolley that runs during tourism season and a microtransit that runs year round, and it would be able to self-sustain itself. That would be my goal. And I know that was a goal from Envision Concord. So we're just trying to take one step at a time.
Before we continue the conversation, we had some technical difficulties with the hybrid format in the beginning. I want to ask the TAC members if they would mind extending the meeting to 10:45.
Say that again. Sorry, Nick.
No, it just for the TAC members. The meeting was scheduled, this meeting was scheduled to end at 10:30, but we had technical problems at the beginning. If the TAC members can and the public can stay till 10:45, that will allow time continuation of this, and then liaison and public comment.
So wait a minute, what time were we scheduled to end?
I believe we were scheduled for 2 hours today, Mark, but
The agenda said 10:30.
oh, okay.
I believe. I could be wrong, but anyway.
Oh, no, I don't think we had an end time on the agenda.
Well, anyway.
Yeah, but in
Works
any
for
case,
me.
Let's continue though, if we still have a quorum, certainly. Go ahead, Phil.
Beth, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for seeing the grant opportunity and hopping on it. I think that's awesome. And I also think that this is a very good fit for what we need. So I'm interested to see if we're able to get the grant and actually implement it. I'm wondering if you can send around to us or communicate to us either a website or some other source of information about how it's currently working in the towns where it's been implemented that are similar to us. Like it seems like Plymouth is the most analogous town in the group that you mentioned. And, I'd be interested to hear how they've used the money, how it's worked, how it's been promoted, for example. So, one of the things that comes to mind is that we did have the pilot crosstown trolley, and I think we didn't get great numbers of people using that trolley, in part because I imagine people weren't even aware that it existed. So I'm hoping that part of the grant or part of the program to implement this would include some public relations so that people are aware that this system exists so they can take advantage of it.
Yeah, for sure. I work with Plymouth really closely. Town of Concord is actually a member of the Plymouth Tourism Agency, which is actually how I found out they were running a microtransit, is because they send monthly newsletters. So I know a lot about their program and how they extended it. And I know a lot about the city of Salem and how they ran theirs. So we can absolutely get some testimonials from them. I talk to both of them on a regular basis. So I think that will help a lot for you guys to understand what kind of project it is. And again, Mimi and I have been meeting with these guys now and are meeting again Thursday. And there's an FAQ that we're going to attend, or I'm going to attend tomorrow, that Mass DOT is running to answer some more questions about the grant.
Great, thank you.
Mimi, did I leave anything out?
No, I think you covered it well. Thank you.
No, I think this is an excellent idea. In terms of getting a letter of support voted from the TAC, when would you need that? When would that be desirable to have?
So I sent Laura the template that Via sent us. It does need some modification and it does need a dollar amount because we don't have the dollar exact yet. So I think in my ideal world, we submit it the first week of January. I don't know how Mimi is feeling first, or maybe at the latest, the end of that first week of January would be ideal, both for my time frame and Mimi's time frame, and to get us in there in an organized way. So I'm hoping that, what is today, only the 6th. So within a month, I would like to submit it.
Can we, question, Beth, can we have that detailed description of the service at the consumer level by then so that we can look at it? So we know what we're endorsing? Okay.
Yes, we'll have Via actually do a little proposal for us. You know, obviously we'll have to go out to bid an FAQ for it, RFQ for it, but we're going to have them give us something in writing that we can, you know, use as a template so we understand really what the scope is that they can offer in the other company as well.
In terms of the timeline, the state initially, the deadline was this Friday. So
Yeah.
thankfully, they've delayed it a little longer, but they're trying to get the funds out as quickly as possible. So I think it's going to be a quick turnaround.
Yeah, so they gave us till January 19th, but I'd love to have it in right at the first of the year. I figure the early bird, they are reviewing them. It looks like they're reviewing on a rolling basis.
So Nick, you mentioned the getting the description of the service, which is if there are two different providers, that would be two different documents. What else would the TAC need in order to TAC members think they would need in order to vote?
I can get some qualitative data from the other communities. That we can get the ones that Via provides, and then we also know that there's other companies and there's some that did it on their own. So Salem did the Salem Skipper, same idea. So I can get the quantitative data from that. I would bet within a week, maybe 2 weeks max. I was just sitting with the city of Salem yesterday, so
I don't want to burden you with what you imagine we might want, but to me, it's sort of like the scope of the service. Exactly what are we doing? Are we doing point to point, or are we doing pickup at people's homes? What are the times of day or days of the week that the service is available? And, you know, it's from the consumer's point of view. What are they going to be able to do? And how much of it will they be able to do? That's the sort of thing I think we need to know, to see, in order to say, oh yeah, that's a great thing, let's support it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mimi and I did go over hours of operation with them because we want the hours of operation to be expanded from what they were for the trolley. So ideally it's a 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. so that it captures people that want to go to dinner. You know, maybe certain nights of the week it goes till 10 p.m. if people are at the theater, if they're at the Umbrella or Concord Players. We want people to be able to use that a lot more, and that keeps their cars off the roads. It's obviously an electric vehicle. It does serve a bunch of purposes, which I have high hopes for it. Implementation is obviously gonna, you know, tell a lot, but what I do like is that the system itself, once we get going, is infinitely adaptable to, as we're seeing what customers need. You know, where the trolley, we didn't really have that opportunity to adjust much. With this, with the nimbleness of the amount of cars and drivers and routes and fixed routes or on-demand routes, we have the ability to adapt very quickly.
Okay, so Laura, do you have a question?
Well, I wanted to volunteer to write a letter of support based on the information that Beth is able to share with us. I did start drafting a letter of support. Beth shared with me on Monday, and I'm sorry I didn't get it out to the whole committee, just sort of like the Regional Transit Innovation Grant, like description of what the grant is, and as well as a template letter from Via. So I was using those things, but I as I was writing this, or as I was drafting the letter, I was like, I needed a lot more information. So I'd be happy to take that on and present something if we're able to meet before the end of the year. I do think it would be great to have a letter ready so that we could give it to the select board. We can give it to other groups that might also be interested in writing a letter of support, because obviously the Council on Aging, Commission on Disabilities, like a public transit service like this has huge implications for the community. And I think a lot of the groups would be very supportive of this once they
And
once
we
they learn
have
about it.
some letters of support that we use for other grants that I can go back to and say, would you write another one? So we know we had one from Emerson Hospital. I see Terry on the call. She already put it tentatively on the select board agenda for the 18th of December.
Wonderful.
That we will need a letter of support from the select board as well.
That's good.
Fortunately, I do think that Nick kind of already wrote our letter, Nick, when you put together the presentation about why public transit is so important in Concord, because this,
Well,
so we can use a lot of those,
Use those.
a lot of those arguments, yeah.
yeah, that's good. So getting back to the, Beth said she'd like to put it in first week of January. That ends in January 5th, the Friday. Are we talking about getting a TAC meeting another TAC meeting, quick focused one on a few letters approval in December, or are we talking about 2, 3, 4 of January? What do people think? What do you think, Laura?
I think it's very much a question for the group. I know December gets busy for everybody, so if folks have capacity in their schedule before the end of the year to have a 1 hour long meeting and just approve the letters that we've discussed today, I'd be happy to try to schedule that. Otherwise, we could try to shoot for the first week of January. But Terry, if you can jump in and tell us if that's going to give us enough time for the letters that we were discussing earlier on the budget, that would be good to know.
Yes, that's enough time.
Okay. So I leave that to the committee to tell us what your schedules are like.
In other words, Terry, you're saying that it doesn't have to be by the December 18th select board meeting, or it does?
I can say that you're working on a letter. I mean, have you agreed that you're going to probably be writing a support letter?
Yes.
Budget, yes.
Then
Yes.
that's good enough. We don't have to have the finished letter by the 18th.
Okay, then Laura, are you going, do we want to gather input now, or do we want to set a date, or do you want to communicate about dates?
Well, if everybody could go around and tell me whether they want to meet in December or in early January, that would be great.
I mean, to me, 2, 3, 4 January is probably fine. It's far enough away I can adjust. In terms of December, it would probably it might have to be remote, but I'm open for the possibility. Dan?
I think a meeting like this can be remote, and either of those timeframes work.
Bill?
Yeah, so the only issue for me is planning to travel Christmas weekend. But other than that, timeframe works.
Okay, so potentially remote for 1 hour sometime next week is possible for them?
Next week?
Well, it depends how long the letters take to be drafted. I don't know how, when might we have the letters?
I can do one by next week sometime. I can have it by Monday, probably.
You want to do it next week or early the following week, which is still before Christmas?
I will be waiting for Beth to give me some more details about the service, so it might next week might be a bit hard.
I'll know more tomorrow because I'll have the Mass DOT meeting and our next meeting with VIA tomorrow. So I'll know more and I can shoot you an email after those meetings and let you know how fast I can pull everything together.
One thing about the service is that VIA had
Just a minute,
communicated.
Nick.
One thing about the service is VIA communicated to us, we want to create a competitive grant. And so we could give our wish list, which is 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week, and get ourselves no longer eligible. So we're trying to sort of massage it so that, and it's also, we're expecting them to be kind of limber and changing. So I think we don't want to refine ourselves too closely to what that exactly the service is. I think in general, we're saying door to door, it potentially a circuit somewhere if there's some economies of scale to be done there. So I think we have our wish list, but maybe it might not be exactly what the scope of work
that VIA is tied to at the end.
Is there something, I see that like Wilson, North Carolina apparently applied for federal money for the same kind of program. Is there anything that where it would translate easily between federal and state? We could get a couple of applications out?
I think once we have our idea, we'll be looking at what all the funding options are. Maybe there's some other opera money that the town has, maybe there's, some other innovation ones that are out there. We're a little late on the innovation trend. But I think, especially around, travel and tourism and the economic development aspects, I think we can make something competitive around there. And then going back to the thing about leveraging the Council on Aging's resources, there might be something there, because I know they're short of band, so maybe we might be able to, cobble together some other funding options based on the populations that we're going to be serving.
I think in terms of detail that we would need, I think we don't need to know exactly what it's going to be. We need to know minimally what it's going to be. So for instance, if you are going for, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., but you are confident it'll be at least 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., then tell us 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. We just need to know what the minimum service is going to be.
Okay, that's
supported.
great.
Well, just going back to our scheduling conversation, it would be easier for me if we had a meeting. Again, I'd also like to meet virtually sometime in the week of the 18th.
Me too.
I think it would be a bit better to give us a little bit more time, and I can coordinate with Beth and ask questions about getting the specificity necessary for the letter. I think similar to the finance committee or the letter to the finance committee and the select board, our job is to make the case that we need public transit, not so much the very specific details at this stage. So I'm happy to get that letter started. And I can send around a poll to the committee members to find a time for us to meet to approve letters.
Could you include the week of Christmas, 27, 8, and 9 as well as options?
Yeah, I'll make several options for the last 2 weeks of December.
And Laura, for that letter to the select board on this transportation service, you'll pull out whatever you need from that slide I did with all the benefits, or okay, let me know if you need anything.
Will do. I think I have that slide presentation. It might also be on our website, so that's good.
Okay, so is there any more discussion about the microtransit? Anybody? Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Mimi.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. I think this is
terrific.
A wonderful idea. And I appreciate too that, hopefully the work that goes into identifying the sources of this will also be applicable. Hopefully we'll get this grant. If we don't get this grant, find other ways to take advantage of this great thing. I have one really quick question about the advertising thing. It was my understanding that if something's run by the town, there's a, municipality, there are issues about advertising, but is it because this is a private company that they can do advertising as part of their revenue stream, that it doesn't affect the town's revenue stream, just what they charge us?
I'll have to look into that some more. So when I first took over the operation of the visitor center, we actually had advertising options to advertise here. And that was allowable, at least to my understanding. We would charge businesses to put their brochures and stuff out front. And we stopped that as a business initiative during COVID, and I just never put it back. It wasn't enough stream of revenue for me to justify, pitching it. But maybe because it is a private company, that's an option. I know that's how the other communities have done it to offset some of the costs. And I will say the transportation bond bill is still sitting there with the $2.2 million allocation. So should that miraculously come through, that's an additional funding that we would be able to use for that. So I know that takes time. Lieutenant Governor Driscoll and I have had many conversations about how to get that out and if she can help us get that out. But it's still sitting there. We can just keep crossing our fingers that.
So because, to me, as one of the revenue sources, advertising and also certain types of sponsorship that's more, less of a direct advertising are certainly some possibilities. Right. Is there any pro and con about other applications in conjunction with other municipalities? Is that too complicated, or it's kind of best to kind of go into an pre-existing regional?
So with the micro transit, it's very much, you know, by the mileage. So the micro transit works best in a small geographical area, but it can connect to other municipalities' systems. And we're also still having side conversations with all the other municipalities about continuing to look at trolley service that's regional. With the IMA communities, that was just signed. So that's Concord, Lexington, Arlington, Lincoln. We are looking to see if we can scrounge up some funds to do a test run with multiple trolleys this Patriots Day weekend. You know, we're continuing to look at the most amount of creativity we can kind of throw at it, and at least patchwork a system and hopefully end up with a solution that's long-term sustainable.
Okay.
Beth, real quick, what were the communities in the IMA group again?
It's Concord, Lexington, Arlington, and Lincoln.
Thank you.
And that was
and-
just signed this week.
Okay.
And
we should-
Beth, as you're talking to Via about this particular service, I wonder if
Yes, we will. We'll get
one possible place to connect to might be Trader Joe's in Acton, because it is a point on their I forget what they call it, but their fixed route service in Acton. There's a fixed route service that the closest stop to Concord is Trader Joe's. And so just because I know that this Regional Transit Innovation Grant, one of the things that they're hoping to fund is things that connect systems. I'm sure you were aware of it, but I thought I would just
and one of the
pull
things,
that out.
the other thing is Hanscom is also a transportation end. So we can go as far as that, as well as the Minuteman National Park Visitor Centers. Which is another way to connect. And the Park Service is aware that I'm going to ask them for a letter, the Friends grant, to support this, because they supported the Volpe study and some others.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Much appreciated. So next item is liaison observer comment. Terry, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make? Are you there, Terry?
Yes, sorry, I'm here. I had a question about the beginning of the meeting, Mark.
Mhm.
You made a comment about putting it on the table, putting it all on the table. I think you were talking about the transportation study, and I didn't quite catch what you were saying.
Oh, what I said merely was, after the approving the minutes, the next item was discussing next meeting date for the TAC, and I said I would prefer to postpone that till Laura could join the meeting.
No. This was, you were talking about the transportation study. And you
Uh,
said something about you prefer that we put everything out on the table. I didn't quite catch what you were saying about that.
Use the raw data.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, well, we did discuss, and Mariana mentioned, and I agree, I think there was consensus, Phil, I think, was supportive that we should get the raw data that the Stantec gathered at the compiled at the October 17th meeting, outreach meeting, including there's a spreadsheet that summarizes or collects.
Right, I remember.
Notes.
Isn't that it's about what the goals of the transportation study are? That
Was it when we were talking with Alan and Stephen?
no, I guess never mind. It was right.
Okay, well, I think this is recorded. We can always go back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Catch it.
Okay.
Any other comments, Terry?
No, thanks.
Okay, so then I'd like to open for public comments for people in the room. Would you like to say something, Mary?
Yeah, I make, some bullets.
Identify yourself.
Oh, Mary Weinberg, I live in West Concord. I moved here in 1979.
Can the remote people hear Mary well enough?
Mary Weinberg, I moved to West Concord in 1979. And I was involved in a lot of things that you're talking about in the 80s. And we didn't have anything like this, and so when I saw all the needs, so many things, this is one of the first folders I ever presented and put together. So this was our extent of what was Concord and the town was like. We had a lot of signs, but we did have signs, and it was 1800, maybe there were no signs. So we have advanced. One thing that I don't think we ever had is that from way back, we always had the planning committee, we always had a long range plan. And it always projected the needs 5 years ahead. I don't remember in the long range plan ever having the transportation issues. If there had, probably we wouldn't have been where we are today. But so that's one thing. I have a matrix from 1985 from the long range plan committee that was put together very, very precisely with an X and all of the things that were considered, and I can give you all copies, the most urgent, down the line, 5 years, 10 years. Nothing was done. So citizens and myself, but we saw it and we acted on things. So I do find over the 44 years that our selectmen change, our town manager changes. So therefore, what's decided maybe 5 years with all these good intentions, we get a new town manager who changes the whole process of the way it's done in the town. We get new selectmen, and things that were maybe important 12 years before are completely forgotten. But I think that here today, what we're doing, we have to remember that we're projecting for the future. As you said, if we don't invest now, we're just going to be trying to keep up with the roads. But I think that really, and hopefully we have wonderful Board of Selectmen now, another thing to establish that there will always be a consensus of a long-range plan that will go wherever it goes. So in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, they will see, because not everything will be done. So I really think that's important. And I don't know, maybe Terry is listening. I don't know if our long-range plans have ever included a very, very specific, everything you're doing with all the transportation needs. And maybe in 100 years, they'll look and say, this was the first time we talked about connecting in the town. And I was thinking about it, and I thought, I used to live in Manhattan, and elderly get around very well in Manhattan because you're always within a block or two of some type of public transportation. And I know in our cities, like Boston, they're having a nightmare with the T. It's hard for them to get around. But it seems that this country, we do try to focus on our city transportation, even though we're so far behind Europe. We haven't even begun to catch up. But there's been no effort to think of how we're going to connect everybody in our communities. So I thought that I'm reading a book, and it says, we shouldn't think out of the box. There should be no box. It's by Thomas Friedman. It's called Thank You for Being Late. And so it's a wonderful book. Thank you for being late. So in that context, with no box, that I used to raise money for certain things, and one of them was free performances for 12,000 Boston school children. No box was, I could ask money from anywhere. And I'm thinking that besides on the Hill and the money, from our state and the federal, we're not there yet. Our country doesn't still realize that, like in Europe, the money should come from the state. But we have companies that have very, very deep pockets. And that's where I got the money from McDonald's, Toys R Us. I never work, there's no box when I work, but I thought that the suburbs, what's the benefit of not using our car in the suburbs? Less pollution. All these bullets of, thinking of how can you, remember The Godfather? What was the famous thing? the famous quote from the Godfather, what are you gonna do that's gonna benefit me?
Yeah.
You know, so it's the bullets, so as far as the pollution, that benefits the whole country, that's political, that part gets Elizabeth Warren and, you know, our federal senators on board. The other part is that we establish, and we have all these genius minds, and we have a lot of facilities to work the hardest to get the best prototype idea, exactly what we want. As Mark always says to me, he's very good at it, we have to put down exactly what we want, no holds barred, exactly what we want, how we want the town to crisscross, and then ideas of connecting it. But I thought to make it easier, simplifying how we want the confines of our town to work, cutting back on pollution. And what my idea was, we have 50 states, establish the prototype, pick a town in 50 states. And if they're willing to go along with it, then you pick a company like Apple or somebody to sponsor this prototype idea for 5 years. And again, the advertising, this is what I didn't have any problem with Toys R Us and McDonald's because they didn't want to plaster their name over it because the company was very renowned from New York City. But that can be dealt with, you know, by putting a little, you know, on the nice white little mini buses.
Thank you.
You know, sponsored by Apple. But there's marketing, there's so much money in marketing in these companies. When Paul Toys R Us, he said, I was the first one I asked him for money. He said, we have $40 million, Mary, we didn't know what to do with it. So I'm just throwing out an idea. Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason why the shuttle didn't work in West Concord for me, I live a mile away, I can't walk into town anymore. So how am I gonna get from my house to the shuttle in West Concord to get over to Concord? So it needs to come to the house.
Yeah, well, the micro transit thing certainly is relevant to that. Is there anybody, Brooks, did you want to comment? Is there anyone, okay, so Ned, would you like to make a public comment?
Thank you, Mark. Ned Perry, 362 Bedford Street, picking up on Mary's ideas about boxes. I would like to know where the box is for the paper surveys of your TAC to be returned to. There are places where it can be picked up, but I have not seen publicly a location where they are to be returned. Laura?
I can answer that. If you go to the library, the main branch library, right near the reference desk, you'll see paper surveys there, and there's a box to return them there as well.
Wonderful.
You can also return them to the planning department in 141 Kaiser Road.
Thank you very much. With Heather's, I thought Heather would still be there. I wish she were. Maybe there's an administrative person still there. I would like to pass along from East Concord to Alan Cathcart and his team the congratulations on the completion of the resurfacing of Commonwealth Avenue, which has taken far too long, but it's been done. Finally, I would like to express my surprise and disappointment that Junction Park is not referenced in Alan Cathcart's fiscal year 25 budget. The deputy town manager held a very good discussion with 20 or more people in Junction Park back on October 17th. There were lots of opinions expressed. I see the Center of Concord redo in the budget, but I don't see anything referenced, and I may have missed it, but I don't see anything referencing Junction Park. And I was hoping Heather would still be there for that, but I hope someone will pass along to Alan and to Steve Dugan the fact that Junction Park needs to be budgeted for further studying or for work that the deputy town manager has heard needs to be done. I think Nick was maybe there, so and maybe there are others, maybe Laura was there, but there were 20 plus people. It was a very healthy discussion, and hopefully that process can be moved forward in 2025, not wait for a 2026 budget. Thank you very much. Sorry to take so long. Great meeting, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ned. Yes, I was there at Junction Park. I can pass those two comments on to Alan and Steve Ducron. Harlan.
Good morning, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. I'm on the Finance Committee, but I'm speaking on my own behalf. If you want to get the Finance Committee's attention on the Public Works infrastructure, you easily have an opportunity to make a public comment at the beginning of the meeting, which is scheduled for December 14th, 7 p.m. at the Townhouse. It's one of the first things that we do. So it may be tough to actually get on the agenda as an agenda item, but you're welcome to make public comments. That's it.
Thank you, Colin. Good idea. Is there anyone else on the Zoom meeting who would like to make a public comment? Please speak up. Any more public comments? I don't hear any public comment, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Second,
Okay, Dan,
Yes.
Phil,
yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Mariana,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So
Thank you.
thank you very
Okay,
much, everybody.
Thank you. Great job, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mark, thank you.